Hello, Ravens fans, and welcome to another edition of the Spotlight Ravens series. I'm Aaron Schneider, and the Sports Information Director at Anderson University. And joining us today, our new head coach of the Anderson tennis program is Matt Moore. How are you doing today?
Fantastic, Aaron. Thanks so much for taking time to speak with me.
All right. Well, first, introduce yourself a little bit. First, talk about where you're from.
So I was born in Huntington, West Virginia. So I'm a kid of West Virginia. So I'm bounced around a little bit from West Virginia, spent some time in Florida, spent a little bit of time in Iowa, and then finally landed right here in the great state of Indiana.
All right. So as we progress towards to your hiring here, first let's start. Let's talk about your start in tennis, how that all happened.
So I got to be honest, I got into the sport of tennis really late compared to a lot of players. So I did not actually pick up a tennis racket until I was in middle school. So it was in a middle school gym class that I recognized that I had a hidden talent for the sport of tennis. And ever since that, have made it a huge part of my life and certainly has shaped the person that I am today as far as a coach and a player and the things that the sport means to me.
Okay, and of course this is not your first rodeo in the HCAC as you were a standout player at Hanover College. For tell about a little bit about your playing experience there from what you remember, and then your degree as well.
Certainly. So I was very fortunate to play tennis at Carmel High School, which obviously is a huge tennis
Mm-hmm.
powerhouse here in the state of Indiana. So and that opened up the avenue for a variety of different college options. And something about the Division III world really resonated with me. So I've always been one of those academic minded first individuals. And while I love the sport of tennis, ultimately knew that a degree was going to get me farther in life than the sport of tennis was going to. So opted to go the Division III route, played at Hanover, absolutely loved my time there, enjoyed my teammates, enjoyed my coaches. It's actually kind of ironic that a couple of the coaches still around in the HCAC today are ones that I would have played against as a player, and now I'll get the opportunity to coach against. It's kind of a special moment for me. So while at Hanover, I was a psychology and philosophy double major. Um, Realized right after graduation that I had a really deep passion for the social work industry and wanting to give back to vulnerable populations, not only here in Indiana, but across the world. And went on to get a master's degree from Indiana University in social work and eventually ended up getting my doctorate degree in social work as well. And outside of my job here at Anderson, I'm also on faculty as a social work professor at Ball State University.
All right, and then before and after your playing time, you had a lot of success as a coach at Zionsville High School, and you also spent some time at Butler University. If you want to dive a little bit deeper into that.
Yeah, so I started coaching at Zionsville High School at the age of 24. So it was an opportunity that I had to start as a freshman coach at Zionsville and quickly was able to escalate the high school coaching ranks from freshman coach to JV coach into a varsity role and spent about a decade as a varsity coach for both the boys and the girls program at Zionsville, accumulated over 150 wins, multiple sectional championships, regional titles, conference championships, a couple coach of the year honors, and really have a deep respect for the high school tennis game here in the state of Indiana and across the Midwest. We've seen a lot of players that have moved into the area and have come from other portions of the Midwest and just recognize that there is a really big growing interest for our sports, not only in Indiana, but in some of our neighboring states as well. And after a decade at Zionsville, was offered the opportunity to be the assistant coach for the Butler women's team. It was a leap of faith for me. So I will be honest in saying that I wasn't sure if I was ever really going to go into the college realm of coaching. But when the opportunity presented itself, I decided to take that leap of faith and loved every second of it. So, and after a year as an assistant coach, was promoted to the head coaching role. Had to take some time away from coaching, which I can talk in a little bit about with some of the other questions, just with some medical issues, believe it or not, that took me away from
Mm.
Butler and took me a little bit of time to work through just some personal things in life. And when the Anderson position opened up, it was just a perfect match for, I think, my personality, the values that I place not only on sport, but the value that I also place in the educational setting, and wanting to be a part of an environment that I think has a really strong spiritual and faith-filled background as well.
And I was just about to ask if you, um, like, what was really the selling point for you on Anderson? Like, what you're looking for in terms of a university that you want to work at.
After spending time in the Division I world, and I love Division I athletes. This is by no means a knock on the Division I world, but it's a different mindset that you have. So, and sometimes I think it is a athlete first mindset, which I respect and I understand because I know the amount of time and energy the Division I athletes put to get into where they're at in school and what it is that they want to be able to achieve from a competition standpoint. But part of me didn't like it because I also felt that we lost a little bit of perspective on life. And I feel that the Division III model really does allow for athletes to be athletes, but it also embraces who they are as students, and it also embraces the other areas in their life that they find passion and they find a calling to be able to do. And I love the HCAC conference, coming from it as a former player, and have tremendous respect for the coaches that are in this conference. And really, it was just a perfect match for me.
Yeah, and I've all in my experience in collegiate athletics is that within each division there's not really a better philosophy. There's just different philosophies. Division I has their own mentality. Division II has their own mentality, and Division III does. And that can be said from conference to conference. Where within the HCAC we really push that family concept. That's a key part of their identity.
Absolutely.
So going into the next segment of questions for um, along the lines I typically ask anyone I interview here. So first, who is your biggest inspiration and why?
So my biggest inspiration is hands down my parents. So my parents were extremely young when they had my brother and I, and went through things that lower income families oftentimes struggle with. But throughout their entire time of raising two boys and eventually raising my sister as well, did nothing but showed us the value of hard work and the commitment to family, and have been able to rise above a lot of situations that many individuals might not have the opportunity to rise above. And I sit back and I look at them now, being married for 37 years, knowing all that they've gone through. And it's such a perfect example for me as a husband and for me as a father to want to try to follow through in the footsteps that they've established for us.
All right. And that's awesome. 37 years. So congrats on that. What is your driving force / motivation and why?
And my biggest driving force in my life is certainly my family and the individuals that are closest to me. So I mean, I make it a personal mission in every single thing that I do to do things that would represent my family well, to represent the players that I coach well, to represent the students that I have in the classroom well, and to really try to set the best example that I possibly can in all of my daily activities.
All right. What is your favorite aspect about sports and why?
Well, I'll talk a little bit about tennis on this one. So my favorite thing about tennis is tennis really is like a giant strategy game of chess. So, and it is a sport that requires not only physical talent, but it requires a lot of mental talent and a lot of technique and tactic as well. So being able to coach players on match strategy and being able to anticipate and to predict and to anticipate the moves that are going to come from their opponents and the types of things that they should be able to do on a tennis court it's a great challenge to have. And obviously every player presents with a different skill set and different areas for growth. And as a coach, to be able to figure out the best ways to highlight some of those strengths while also building upon areas of growth it's something really cool about it. So, and it's my favorite thing about the sport is really that analytic, having to dissect and to get into it type of a mindset.
Yeah, definitely part of getting your points in tennis is um, be you can't have some of those point scoring shots without the work that you've done in the previous 4 or 5. You're setting yourself up in combinations.
Absolutely.
All right, and then what are your favorite hobbies?
So my favorite hobbies are probably my kids' hobbies. So, I mean, one, obviously I love tennis, but I've got a daughter that does rock climbing. So I've become a big fan of the rock climbing industry. I've got an older son that plays travel hockey. for the junior fuel. So, I mean, we do a lot of time watching hockey, getting out there on the ice rink. I played hockey a little bit as well and have coached some of his hockey teams in addition to being a tennis coach. So hockey is certainly a big passion that we have. Obviously, the Stanley Cup playoffs going on right now. So we're a little hockey obsessed in our household. My other hobby, this might be a surprising one, is I really like to bake. So baking desserts is one of my favorite things in the world to do.
Okay, so I'm going to follow up on both of those there. So you got a team that you're rooting for in the playoffs right now.
So oddly enough, we're north of the border fans. We're Vancouver Canuck fans in our
All
house.
right, okay.
So, and I think later you're going to ask potentially who my favorite professional athletes are. Well, my favorite athletes are Henrik and Daniel Sedin, who played for the Vancouver Canucks until 2 years ago. And to me, really embodied every single thing that you would expect in a professional athlete.
Yeah, we're just about there too, anyway. And then for what's your favorite thing to cook?
Well, my favorite thing to cook is probably creme brulee. So I like some of the harder desserts to be able to make. So I worked in a bakery all throughout high school and throughout college. So I had quite a bit of exposure to some pretty cool baking tactics and techniques. So I like to push the envelope with some of the desserts.
Okay. And did you play at any other sports aside from tennis?
I played hockey a little bit growing up, but besides hockey and tennis, those are my two primary sports. I'm like everybody else, probably did a handful of intramural sports throughout high school and throughout college, but nothing to where I was dedicating significant amount of time to.
And then does hockey take it as your favorite sport outside of tennis?
Yes, indeed.
All right. Going into more some of the quicker questions, what is your favorite band/artist?
Oh, I am a huge country music fan, so I think that is attributed to my West Virginia upbringing. So my favorite artist, I think right now, is probably Eric Church, but I am a sucker for 80s and 90s country music as well.
All right. What is your favorite food?
Favorite food has to be dark chocolate, which also convince everybody has some redeemable health value to it as well.
I've heard that. What is your favorite sports team?
Probably the Vancouver Canucks or the Florida Gators. So my dad's a Gator, so I grew up on a lot of Florida football and Florida basketball.
All right. Who is your celebrity crush?
Jennifer Nettles from the band Sugarland is my celebrity crush.
Okay. Have you ever traveled outside of the country, and if so, where?
I have. I've done quite a bit of traveling outside of the country. Probably the coolest thing that I did is when I was in undergrad, I did a semester abroad in Sydney, Australia. So I spent 5 months abroad in Australia.
All right. And then along a similar line, if you could travel anywhere in the world, where would it be?
Ooh, oh man. Probably to some of the Nordic countries. So Finland, Iceland, Poland, Norway, Sweden, countries up there.
All right. What is your lucky number?
My lucky number is 22. It's a number that my son has always wore on his hockey jersey. And it's one that I like it because to me it reminds me of him, and that puts a smile on my face.
All right. What is your favorite holiday?
Oh man, I feel like I should probably say one of the nice religious holidays that we have in the world, but I'm actually going to surprise you and throw out Halloween as my favorite holiday.
Okay.
So we have a family that gets into Halloween quite a bit.
And of course, we got the Halloween colors too.
So that is true, right? Anderson does. I don't even have to change out of tennis gear, and I'm ready to go trick-or-treating with the kids.
All right. And then do you have any pets? And if so, what kind and what are their names?
So I have 4 pets. So we have 3 dogs. They're all American Eskimos. So we've got Dakota, Melbourne, and Aspen are our 3 dogs. And we've got a rescue cat named Cairo.
All right. Going into the next segment. What coaching philosophy do you bring into your tennis program?
I would say the biggest things that define my coaching philosophy is a positive approach to every single thing that we do. So while I'm not afraid to have critical conversations, I always am a coach that's going to be encouraging, uplifting, and motivating. So for me, the greatest gains that you see from your players are when your players trust you, they feel supported, they feel cared about by you, and that gives them the environment that they need to push their envelope a little bit further, to be willing to make some mistakes and to grow from those mistakes and to put themselves in the best position possible. And I really try my best to spend equivalent time sort of in the four areas that I see as a coach that are important. And that is the technique that goes into tennis shots, from stroke mechanics to footwork, also the tactical aspect of it, which talks a little bit about what you're going into. That is, how do you set up a point, right? What types of pattern plays, movements should we be looking for? The physical side of things through good hard conditioning. And we spend a lot of time in our program doing mental aspects, whether it's yoga, meditation, mental rehearsal, mental imagery, mindfulness techniques. But at least once a week, we dedicate a good 45 minutes to an hour to just the mental side of the game.
Okay. And now, what would you like to see the tennis program accomplish?
These are words that our players will hear routinely from me. For me, it's all about maximizing our potential. So if we maximize our potential as individuals and as a team, we live with the outcomes. So does it mean we're going to win every match? Absolutely not. Does it mean we're going to lose every match? Let's pray to God that doesn't happen either. But ultimately, right, we've got to worry about the things that we can control. And if we maximize our skill set while we're out there, we're controlling our end of the bargain. And then ultimately, we'll live with the outcomes as they come to us.
All right, and then finally, as people come across tennis student athletes on a day-to-day basis, what would you like that association to be when as the perception among campus and others?
I want them to be able to look at our program as a model program for Anderson. I want our student athletes to be successful in the classroom. I want them to be dedicated to their sport. I want them to be dedicated to their faith. And I want them to be dedicated to giving back to a cause that's much larger than themselves throughout our local community and even our state, national, and international communities. So for me, when you look at an Anderson tennis player, it's important that they're well-rounded in all of those areas because they all work together. If we're doing great things in the classroom, it'll come off as also being able to do great things on the tennis court. Because if we can control the areas in our life as best as we can and ensure that we're doing our part to look after each of those different facets, when we're out there on a tennis court, our minds are going to be in the right spot, our bodies are going to be in the right spot, and we're going to be able to really focus in and take advantage of the time that we have together through practices, matches, etc.
All right. Well, I've covered all of my questions. Coach Moore, thank you so much for doing this interview with us. Ravens fans, thank you for tuning in. Be sure to follow along as we'll have more Spotlight Ravens series interviews coming this week and this month, plenty more. So follow along, and we will see you tomorrow.